All right, everyone, buckle up because today's deep dive is going to be a little different.
Oh, how so?
Well, we're not diving into the world of tech or uncovering some historical mystery this time.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's on the agenda then?
Today, we're talking about something way more personal, something everyone has experience with, but rarely discusses openly the surprising link between your sexual health and your overall well-being.
I see. Now, that's a topic that tends to make people a little uncomfortable.
Exactly. And to guide our exploration, we'll be referencing this fascinating book called Sex and Cardiovascular Diseases.
Interesting. So we're talking about the heart of the matter. Literally.
You got it. And get this, even doctors, specifically cardiologists, can get a little squeamish when it comes to discussing this connection with patients. You'd think heart specialists would be all over it, right?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But it just goes to show how this topic can be a bit of a minefield, even in the medical world.
It's like the elephant in the room that nobody wants to address.
Precisely. And that's a big reason why this deep dive is so important.
I agree. So before we get into the nitty-gritty, could you shed some light on why this connection between sexual health and overall well-being is so crucial? What's the big deal?
Well, think of it this way. When you're engaged in sexual activity, and yes, we're including self-pleasure here, it's a natural part of life. Your body becomes incredibly responsive.
Makes sense. Things are certainly active.
Right. And it's through this heightened responsiveness that your body basically gives you a full disclosure health report in real time. You see how your heart rate, your blood flow, your muscle responses, they all come into play. It's impossible to ignore.
Wow, I never thought about it like that. So it's our bodies are giving us a live demonstration of how well things are working or not working, as the case may be.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so different from, say, a regular checkup.
So it's not about becoming hyper-aware of every little twinge and ache.
Not at all. It's more about recognizing patterns over time. If something consistently feels off in the bedroom, that's your body trying to tell you something. It's valuable information.
Information that we often ignore or are too embarrassed to talk about. It's like our bodies are saying, hey, pay attention. Something's not quite right here, but we're too busy shying away from the conversation.
And sadly, this taboo prevents a lot of people from getting the help or information they need.
It's almost like we're conditioned to not talk about it.
Sadly, in many ways we are. But the more we talk about it, the more we normalize these conversations, the better equipped we are to take care of ourselves.
Couldn't agree more. So we'd established that our bodies are pretty vocal, even if we're not always listening. But this communication, this feedback, it kind of evolves as we age, right?
It most definitely does.
Huh?
And one of the most fascinating aspects explored in this book is how men and women experience these changes differently, particularly as they navigate life after 40.
Yeah, the book dives deep into that. Like, for example, there's this common misconception that menopause equals the end of a woman's sex life.
Right, which is a total myth.
Totally. The book argues that menopause can actually be a time of increased desire and a whole new world of pleasure for women.
It's true. Menopause comes with significant changes, especially hormonally. And these changes can actually lead to some pretty unexpected and often positive outcomes in terms of libido and sexual experience. In fact, the book refers to it as a sort of rewiring.
Rewiring. So it's not that desire disappears, it just kind of transforms.
Exactly, and that's why open communication is so vital.
Absolutely. On the flip side, the book also talks about how men often struggle with performance anxiety as they get older, which can have its own set of consequences.
You're right, and that pressure to perform can create a vicious cycle.
How so?
Well, that stress and anxiety can negatively impact cardiovascular health, which then further fuels the performance anxiety. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It's like fear feeding the very thing they're afraid of. So for our listeners who might still be a ways away from their 40s, what's the key takeaway here? Why does any of this matter to them?
That's a great question. Even if you're not at that stage of life yet, understanding these gender-specific changes can give you a whole new level of insight and empathy for your partner.
It's all about connection, understanding, and realizing that everyone's navigating these waters just maybe with slightly different maps.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
And speaking of different maps, the book goes into fascinating detail about how men and women are literally built differently when it comes to their hearts and circulatory systems, which plays a huge role in all of this.
Like, for example, did you know that men actually have larger hearts than women? I guess size does matter, at least in cardiology.
Well, in that context, yes. But in all seriousness, men typically have larger hearts, greater blood volume, and more muscle mass, while women have more capillaries, those tiny blood vessels, and a different blood flow pattern, particularly in the abdominal region.
Which makes sense considering pregnancy and childbirth.
Precisely. And these differences in our anatomy influence how men and women experience things like fatigue, endurance, and hormonal fluctuations. It's all connected.
It's incredible how complex our bodies are, but that complexity is part of what makes this topic so fascinating. So we've explored these fascinating gender differences, but what really caught my eye was the impact of our daily habits on all of this.
Absolutely. It's not just about what happens in the bedroom, right? Our lifestyle choices have a ripple effect on our overall health, including our cardiovascular system, which we know is intertwined with our sexual well-being.
Right. The book really digs into some unexpected areas, like smoking. I mean, we all know it's bad for us, but the book gets super specific about how it can directly affect our enjoyment of sex.
It's true, and often overlooked. One study cited in the book found that smokers were twice as likely to report experiencing erectile dysfunction compared to non-smokers. And it's not just limited to those kinds of issues. Smoking affects everything from desire to even basic sensation.
Seriously? How so? I mean, I know it's not great for your lungs, but...
Well, nicotine, despite often being perceived as a stimulant, can actually constrict blood vessels, especially those tiny capillaries responsible for blood flow to, well, let's just say, those sensitive areas.
Oh, okay, I see. Less blood flow, less sensation. Makes sense.
Exactly, and there's more. Smoking also diminishes our sense of smell, and believe it or not, scent plays a huge role in arousal.
Wow, I never really connected those dots, but you're right. I mean, nobody wants to kiss an ashtray.
Exactly. It all ties back to the bigger picture of our senses and how they influence our experiences.
It's amazing how all these things we might not even think about are connected. But moving beyond smoking, the book also highlighted something else I found really interesting. How having an irregular routine can mess with our hormones. And we know how crucial hormones are in all of this.
Oh, absolutely. Our bodies crave consistency. When we have irregular sleep schedules, inconsistent meal times, and are under constant stress, our hormonal balance takes a hit.
So are you saying that pulling an all-nighter isn't just bad for my brain, but for, well, everything?
Pretty much. It's like the book compares it to, imagine a symphony orchestra trying to play a beautiful piece, but each musician is following a different tempo.
Chaos, right? Yeah, definitely not music to my ears. And while we're talking about things that can throw our bodies off balance, what about medications?
You're hitting on another important point. Both prescription and recreational medications can influence our hormones and, consequently, our sex lives.
It's true. The book mentions certain antidepressants and blood pressure medications, for instance, can sometimes lead to side effects like decreased libido or even difficulty achieving orgasm.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And it's different for everyone, which is why open communication with your doctor is crucial.
absolutely. You know, it's refreshing to talk about this stuff so openly. It's like we're finally addressing the elephant in the room. And since we're on a roll, can we talk about that whole dying during sex fear? You know what I'm talking about, right?
I think we've all had those fleeting thoughts at some point.
Right. But thankfully, it's incredibly rare. The book even mentioned a study that found you're more likely to be struck by lightning than to, well, you know.
Definitely puts things into perspective.
Yeah.
When enjoyed safely and consensually, sex is actually incredibly beneficial for both our physical and mental well-being.
That's reassuring to hear. But I think the bigger point is we need to pay attention to our bodies. Those subtle changes, those off feelings, they might be our body's way of sending us a message.
Absolutely. This deep dive isn't about becoming medical experts overnight. It's about recognizing the signs and having those sometimes awkward but crucial conversations with our partners and healthcare providers.
It's about listening to our bodies and advocating for our own health. Speaking of which, up next, we're going to delve into how some seemingly small changes in our bodies can actually be big indicators of our overall health. It's incredible how our bodies have all these subtle ways of trying to get our attention right, like they're sending us little smoke signals.
It's true. They're constantly communicating with us. But we're not always fluent in body language, are we?
Definitely not. And sometimes those messages can be pretty cryptic.
Exactly. It's like trying to solve a mystery with only half the clues.
Yeah.
But the book does a great job of highlighting those often missed connections, showing us how changes in one area, even seemingly unrelated to our hearts or, our sex lives, can actually be super revealing.
You mentioned earlier how smoking can mess with our sense of smell. And now I'm wondering, could changes in our sense of smell be a red flag too? Like, even if we're not smokers?
You're right on track. The book talks about how subtle shifts in our body chemistry, often due to underlying health conditions, can manifest in all sorts of unexpected ways, including how our sweat smells.
Wow, I never would have thought of that.
It's true. And it's not just about smell either. Sudden changes in your sense of taste, those weird food aversions that come out of nowhere, even persistent digestive issues that you just can't seem to shake, they can all be signs that something else is going on beneath the surface.
It's like our bodies have this whole internal communication network that we're just starting to tap into. So given all this new insight, what does the book suggest we do with it?
It boils down to two things: awareness and prevention. The book really emphasizes the importance of regular checkups, being proactive, and knowing your family's medical history. You know that questionnaire they give you at the doctor's office, the one most people skim over? It's worth taking the time to really fill it out thoughtfully.
That's a good point. It's easy to dismiss those forms, but they're there for a reason.
Exactly. And on the topic of simple yet powerful tools, let's not forget about touch.
Touch, like massage.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
not just about pampering ourselves, although that's never a bad thing. Massage can actually have profound physiological benefits. The book highlights how it can improve blood flow, release those feel-good endorphins that do wonders for our mood and stress levels, and even deepen intimacy with a partner.
It's easy to overlook those simple things we can do to take care of ourselves. But this conversation has really driven home the point that it's not just about our physical health, is it? It's about recognizing how interconnected our minds, bodies, our emotions truly are.
Absolutely. And here's a final, thought-provoking point from the book that really speaks to that interconnectedness. Did you know that studies have shown that social isolation can be as detrimental to our health as, get this, smoking? Let that sink in for a moment.
Wow. That is a powerful statement. It really makes you think twice about the importance of human connection, intimacy, and cultivating those relationships that bring joy and meaning into our lives.
It's a potent reminder that taking care of our emotional and social well-being is just as crucial as taking care of our physical health. They're not mutually exclusive. They're pieces of the same puzzle.
This deep dive has been a fascinating journey, full of eye-opening information about the incredible ways our bodies communicate with us and what we can do to live healthier, more fulfilling lives.
It's been a pleasure exploring these connections with you today. Remember, knowledge is power.
It absolutely is. And listeners, if anything resonated with you today, don't just let it sit there. Talk to your doctor, do some more research, and most importantly, keep these conversations going. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and take good care of those incredible bodies of yours.